Hello, everybody. You're listening to Iorì Wase's Front Page Podcast. In this episode, we sit down with newly elected Mohawk Council of Kahnawake Grand Chief Kahsennenhawe Sky Deer, and we discuss her historic election win, as well as talk about the newly elected council. I'm Greg Horn, and I'm joined today by newly elected Grand Chief Kahsennenhawe Sky Deer. Welcome.
Greg, and what Colorado Zawagwego.
So, historic moment in this community's history, Saturday night. Early Sunday morning, electoral officer Angus Elmontor announced the results of the 2021 MCK elections. How did you feel?
Well, I don't know if you seen when I first got there, really nobody knew that we were going to be able to go into the building, right? It was quite a shock. Like, okay, he comes outside, everybody come on in.
Yeah, everyone was like, what?
Right? So as we start ushering in, and then like I was with my grandmother, Anna, and she didn't have a mask. So my ragani was like, Kahsennenhawe, go get her a mask. So I ran down the stairs onto the floor, like where the counting ballot station was, and grabbed the box, ran upstairs, and now I'm distributing masks to everybody who didn't have any. And all of a sudden I hear Angus saying, and now for the announcements for Grand Chief. And I threw the box and I literally start running to where my grandmother was standing. And when he said my name, Greg, like just tears, like, I don't know if it was relief, if it was joy, if it was just overwhelmed with pride and humbled and honored, like, and to have my grandmother there with me, witnessing that moment, because I mean, she's, 85 years old. And when I was like, Dada, you're going to come, right? And she was like, yeah, it reminds me of the days when, me and my sisters, we would go hang out by the Garinoha school to hear the announcements. I'm like, well, imagine your granddaughter could be Grand Chief tonight. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to come. So for her to be there with me in that moment was just really also overwhelming. Yeah. So after it was said and done, and hearing also that a few people didn't get back in, or well, Rhonda specifically, I worked with her for the last 12 years now, and knowing, how much she had put into files and work. And of course, we had a retirement of Clinton, and well, obviously 2 more at the table because of them seeking Grand Chief positions. It is quite a turnover of, new people, I guess, at the table, 5 to be exact, and the 4 from last term. So really you have 3 veterans left at the table with myself, Lindsay, and Mike, so to speak, in terms of...
And Lindsay is a veteran, but he was off council for so many years, right? So his almost like it is
returning also too. Yeah. So, and then Monday, we had a tobacco burning at the main building, and we invited the staff to come out because I felt it was important too for them to hear the words and the messaging and to be a part of that ceremony and putting tobacco forth to start fresh. And, we've all been through a lot within the organization with COVID, loss of a Grand Chief, just the feeling of being disconnected from each other too, working remotely. And so it was nice for them to all participate in that. And then we had our first official council meeting and, first orders of business right away. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited about, the potential. I already met with just the, I would say 5, but Alan John actually had surgery. So he told us he was going to be off for a 2-week period. So the 4 council chiefs being Jessica Lazar, Ryan Montour, Barton Goodleaf, and Arnold Boyer, myself, and Sam met yesterday for the whole morning. And I just wanted to get to know them. It was more like a team building exercise for people to talk about like what has been their work experience in the last couple of years. What do they hope to bring to the council table? What did they hear when they were doing campaigning out in the community, like what the concerns of the community are and where they would like to focus their attention as portfolio distribution starts to roll around. So I thought it was a really good exercise to hear from them. And then I jotted down some notes and said, well, based on what you heard, this is what I think. And, hopefully here's the 16 portfolio wheel structure that we have. Each and every one of you is going to be a lead on one of them. So I would like for you to start thinking where you see yourself within, the structure and wanting to bring that work forth. So it was a pretty good dialogue.
And I guess it's been quite a whirlwind since early Sunday morning, and then going from there. I've seen you getting a photo shoot on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I think all the major news outlets in Montreal and across Canada have been featuring articles and videos with you.
Yes, definitely. Like you said, a whirlwind. It's like every day I'm getting requests and, up at the break of dawn, having to go on CTV National and Global. But, I think it's important that they're recognizing that history was made, first woman, first LGBTQ2S person in, this role that's out. And, the Mohawks have always been known to be very progressive in their politics and different things and our stances on, rights issues or fighting for land defenders, etc. So in terms of, the evolution of women in politics, I think this was a long time coming now for there to be a woman Grand Chief. We all know traditionally what the roles of women have been when it came to, protectors of the land and ensuring preservation of our culture, our clan, passed down to our children and strong identity and all of that. So I think it was just a natural evolution, and I'm really looking forward to the challenge. And because I've heard time and time again, I have my foot in the ship and foot in the canoe, metaphorically speaking, and hoping to bridge the gap a little bit, and having people see what the MCK really does for the community, that, this kind of facade or mantra that people have, oh, you're arm of the federal government, you're doing their bidding, you're a sellout, you do this, you do that. But ultimately, if they were really to come and do a tour and see the way the people work for the community, that we're always pushing for our rights to be recognized, our jurisdiction, like the days of the Indian age are long gone. The system is still here, elected system, but ultimately we're all community members. We're born here, grew up here. We have the same common goals, values, interests as everybody else. It's just a different means of getting there.
Now you're at work as the Grand Chief as a Honda Iade, and there's a big issue that's coming back to the forefront again. I mean, it's been there for 300 plus years. There's a residential development going on in Chattagita, which is on lands that are bordering the community and bordering land that's been returned. How, I guess, is it that you guys as the MCK are gonna look to handle this?
So we had put out a press release yesterday, and the title of it was Not One More Inch. We know that's been a longstanding principle of this community, that when you look around, we've had every kind of land expropriation that could have happened to us, a seaway, a bridge, train, hydro. We all know the reality, what exists in our community. So the fact that we've been petitioning the federal and provincial government to sit down with us to have lands returned to this community now since 2003 with the confirmation of the grievance of the Seigneurie of Sault Ste. Louis. So 18 years and really no firm progress. And it's kind of been stagnant now for the last 5 years and no real political will to move it. So we made sure that, like yesterday, I went to see the people who were sitting there at the
land occupation.
Occupation, exactly, good word. And handed the secretary of 207 Longhouse all of the letters that we've sent, not only to the mayor of Chattagay, but to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs for Canada, Carolyn Bennett, even to the Prime Minister. And then on the Quebec side, to Premier Legault, Ian Lafreniere, saying, this is a priority. Can we please try to resolve this and show the community that there's some movement, some political will to try to sit down with us to resolve this, because it makes sense. The land right now is not developed. It's not occupied. It's a proposed project. And we know there's that 211 outstanding acres from the Highway 30 lands that it's already contiguous to land that was returned to the community with Parcel E. Why not buy it or somehow have it returned to Kahnawake? So that's what we're pushing for. And unfortunately, like I said, all these letters kind of went unanswered or not really shown any kind of political will. So what happens is the people end up saying, enough is enough. We're going to take a stand, and we fully support that. Like when it's a grassroots initiative or it's the Longhouse, people of the Longhouse take a position, we let them know that we're fully supporting them.
I mean, I think it's probably even more frustrating because since the Liberal government was elected in 2015, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said, no, there's no relationship more important to me than Canada's relationship with Indigenous people. And I think, we're seeing that's not really the case, right?
Well, I have to say, in the last couple of days, I've seen some very interesting things coming out of the federal government, such as the appointment of an Indigenous Governor General, and then the unprecedented agreement with the Kahsennenhawe First Nation in Saskatchewan of them taking over their, I don't want to say child welfare services, exactly. So maybe the time is now. I mean, we just went through an experience last year with the train blockade and how we were able to show the whole of Canada or Turtle Island what could happen when, Indigenous rights or land issues are kind of brushed off and, we're not accommodated through the requirement for them to duty to consult. So I think actions like this that tend to be deemed as, like a protest or it's drastic. Well, if you would just negotiate in good faith and show us that you're willing to make things happen, the community won't get all upset and feel that this is the only other alternative is to take a stand and do something, So put their money where their mouth is. Like you said, if no relationship is more important and we want to see progress, we want to see reconciliation, all these key words that have been thrown around in the last, and we'll call it in the Trudeau era, well, then let's see the action behind the words. It's overdue.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I think all eyes are on Trudeau's government right now. Since the discovery of the unmarked graves starting in Kamloops and then, going across the country and there's more than 1,500 unmarked graves that have been uncovered and rediscovered. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people are like, well, what are you going to do? That, reconciliation is more than just a buzzword. And we need some concrete actions from the federal government because ultimately it's the federal government that was responsible for these schools.
Yep. So I've heard that time and time again from people. They said it seems to them that Canada is in an all-time low in terms of the spotlight and, everything that has come to light of our history, of our experience as Indigenous people in this country, the attempted genocide, assimilation, oppression, continued systemic racism. Like, when is our time to rise up and say enough is enough? And I started to feel it, and it's a progression, right? I don't know if it started from 1990. I don't know if it was maybe before that in the 70s, but there's definitely things happening in Indigenous country that we can't ignore. And if it's like an Indigenous resurgence or, things are happening around the world, but we have to do something.
We grew up in 1990 and after and seeing how we as a community acted and supported our sister community in Kahnawake, and there's been a change in mentality and people returning to traditions, returning to language, and there's been this groundswell and these actions that have been done throughout the years. But now I think in especially over the last 6 weeks or so, whenever we're doing things, it seems that the non-native population is seeing it and is understanding and is supportive, which has almost never happened in the past.
Exactly. It's definitely a new age. I'm sure the internet and social media also plays a part because everybody is seeing what's unfolding, not just here in Canada, but even across the world, right? And it's nice to see non-Indigenous supporters like actually realizing now what Indigenous people have been through in this country. And when we had the rolling blockade there on last Thursday, like Cancel Canada Day kind of thing, but to see the people who were passing and who were beeping their horns or who were raising their fists to us in support and solidarity, as well as the comments that were all over social media. And, it's not everybody that views us and wants to paint us with a brush of, oh, well, they're lazy and they're, welfare collectors, that they have all this, alcoholism and drug addictions. Well, can you blame anybody if that's the reality on reserve when now what was done to our people, like children taken from their families and experiencing all these horrible things, atrocities, and some of them never coming home. And how do you think that made parents feel, not knowing whatever happened to their child? There was never any answers or anything.
Closure,
exactly. So I think they're really putting themselves perhaps in our shoes and really thinking about what happened, what was done is just, it's unacceptable. It's unforgivable. And so now, like you said, in terms of that spirit of reconciliation, like what is the federal government going to do to reconcile? I don't think apologies or any amount of money is ever going to really help us to get over it. It really has to be actions now, returning of lands and really allowing us to exercise governance the way we want to and stop interfering in our affairs and legislating over us and continuing to have that kind of superiority mentality that we don't know what's best for us, like as if we're children that don't know what we're doing. Those days are over.
Yeah, I mean, one of their big announcements after all this started, when they said, okay, well, we're going to have something that's concrete. We're going to do some concrete actions. And the first thing that they announced was allowing Indigenous people to use their Indigenous names on passports. I mean, it was like, really?
Oh my God. And, we always talk to, from our cultural standpoint, is that those names, if you're given it in Kahsennenhawe and it means something, you don't put those names which belong in the canoe, in the ship, and on the cards and on the passports. Like I know, like even for myself, because I never really used my Jarhasa English name. That's all I use is Kahsennenhawe. So it is on all of my documents, but I was never named officially in the Longhouse. But it still bothers me that, that's the names that are on all of these external documents. So it's difficult, in terms of us balancing and meandering through, like I said, all these different things that are a means to an end, whether it's driver's license, Medicare card, passports, it's what we have to do.
Yeah, I guess I'll switch gears a little bit here now. We got a new council. We're talking about, a lot of changeover. And I mean, I think the biggest change is that you're now Grand Chief. And I mean, we've been without a Grand Chief since Joe passed away last year. So how are you going to be taking the job and conducting the job at the position of Grand Chief? What kind of changes can the community expect?
So obviously, my whole platform was wanting to see changes, wanting to empower people to be a part of that change, because we as the council can't do it alone. Coming at it from a cultural standpoint, because that's what I know, in terms of going through, just like yourself, the whole Garino Hadzi Dariwa Estakwa experience, immersion school, having all that culture. When I came back from Florida, like I made a commitment that, my wife and my kids, we were going to go back to Longhouse and practicing ceremonies, to graduating the 5-year language and culture training program at the MCK. So everything that I've learned, whether it was roles and responsibilities, creation, story, great law, and the way we conduct business and the way that we know ourselves as what it means to be Ungwehue and Ganyagahaga, and how we deal with the outside, all comes from that mindset now, because that's who I am. So what I told the council is, from now on, every time we meet as a council, Ahondagari Wedekwa. We're going to open, we're going to close, and everybody's going to learn it. Whenever we meet with external governments, be it provincial, federal, you make sure you wear your traditional clothing so that they know that we're still distinct, that assimilation process that they tried to, I guess basically eradicate, the Ungwehue mindset and thinking, that they weren't successful, that we're still here, we still have this, that we still can speak our language. Iorì Hawana zi adawatunde tokarani gawanage, when we meet with them, stuff like that. Decision making, we've already kind of moved away from voting. We've been trying to do consensus building now for the last couple of years. The whole governance project in phase 2 was about asking the community, well, what do you see needs to be the criteria of somebody to hold office? How do they conduct themselves? All of that. So we definitely heard a lot in this whole campaign about accountability, transparency. We need to see more of that. I'm completely changing the format of the way community meetings has gone with that, the 12 of us sitting at the front and very adversarial with the community. We're going to sit in a circle. I talked about maybe community clan meetings. I have so many ideas, Greg. It's all going to be a work in progress, little by little. But what I'm very motivated by is the fact that all of the council, each and every one of them are feeling some kind of an energy and a vibe right now about everything we just went through and how we're going to work for the community and with the community together. I even told them, I said, make sure you get over there to the land occupation, sit there with the people, hear from them. Let's show them we're in this together and we want a unified approach.
That's one of the issues that's facing the community, and I'm sure there's a lot that have been talked about over the last over the course of the campaign. So how does the MCK now go about addressing and trying to fix some of these problems, right? And where do we go from seeing that there's a problem and what's the resolution? How do we get there?
Well, I think us having a priority setting session is really important. And right now we're going through a whole orientation process for the new council. And I definitely think it's important for us to hear from the community also, because through the campaign, I did hear people providing solutions, ideas, things that I had never heard about, and they're just everyday community members who are passionate about wanting to see some differences and some changes in this community and the way we do things. So I think having maybe these open forums or think tanks, topic specific, like maybe once we do the portfolio distribution, have an open meeting to say, all right, housing, we're going to discuss housing. People who want to come and address, some of the issues and how you think we could approach it. What's going to be the short-term, mid-term, long-term solution? Even if you drive around the village proper, there's some dilapidated and old falling apart properties that if, let's say, the council was to try to approach these landowners and if they don't respond, I hate to use the dirty word of expropriation, but we can't just have these properties sitting here not being utilized. There's people who have mobility issues. I know that was also brought up too on candidates night about the people in this community who maybe don't have access because there are disabilities that they want to feel that they're a part of this community. And what are we doing to ensure there's inclusion and that they're part of the fabric, part of meetings, So Arnold, I had no idea in terms of, his former background was all about looking at buildings and accessibility. Like even when we talk about, we're going to have a meeting at the green space. Well, did you ever consider, if somebody shows up who's in a wheelchair and they need to access the restroom or something like that, or if it's on a hill, it's stuff you never even thought about. So I think that's awesome that he brings a whole different perspective that a lot of us don't think of, we take for granted, right? So,
and again, that's one perspective, and I think that's something that most people just take for granted, right? And so, I mean, and you talked about housing, and that's one major issue, and there's a lot of different issues regarding that, right? It's going from the need for affordable housing and emergency housing in some situations, and helping community members maybe get an emergency place to stay for a short period of time. There's the scandal. There's also the asbestos issue, and that's all related, right? And so how do we see a resolution to these things?
And what's awesome also is the fact that we have a new executive director, so when you look at the operational aspect of the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake and the political, but the fact that the community expects there to be accountability and responsibility for everything, right? It's not separate in the minds of the people. So looking forward to having a working relationship too with the executive office, the new executive director, Honoratoka Markwi, so that we can, try different approaches, try different things. I know one of the outstanding things right now is getting a housing director, and it's been a challenge. And then the fact that there already was like a survey with the community to say, well, where are the needs? What do you want to see in the next little while with regard to housing? So we have this, $12 million housing budget that's there. But it's like we have to be strategic in the execution and what comes first and where's the priority. Like you said, is it the social housing? Is it the elders housing? Is it, students want to start moving out of their parents' homes and being independent? So we have to go at it from multiple approaches. And what you mentioned about the scandal, I mean, that's out of the community's hands at this point. The investigation was done. It's in the hands of the prosecutor. So whether or not there's going to be any lawsuit, or I don't know what happens next in terms of a legal proceeding, but that's still pending. And yeah, there's definitely, and housing is just one part of the social, we heard a lot about the drug issue and the fact that that needs to be tackled, the wellness part, and that community members want to see some kind of detox or, more wellness programs, men's wellness programs, women's wellness programs, so that people can, if they're suffering from addictions, and that they can get the supports right here in the community. From a cultural standpoint also, I think was very important. So yeah, I think maybe having, like I said, more community engagement, because I don't think it's only the MCK that's going to solve these issues, right? As a community, we are all vested. It's our families that we're talking about. It's our people. So let's pull together and see how it is that we can try different approaches, because the old way of doing things obviously hasn't been working, because we're in a predicament, right? It's like it kind of got compounded because one thing led to another. And of course, there's this looming lack of trust. And I was talking to Barton about economic development, because he comes from the business community, and he was saying, like the tobacco industry and different things, how people want to do a community contribution to some kind of a fund, but they don't want it going to the MCK. I said, well, great. Then, why don't we develop some kind of like the Kahnawake Funding Association that was tried by OTT a few years back, but it be private business people, and they could elect their own board, community board, to distribute the funds. And even the MCK would have to apply to it if there was like a void in funding somewhere that we didn't get for a specific program or political initiative or something, Yeah,
that might be where the Kahnawake Business Association comes into play, right? And there's been a lot of talk, and I think there was a lot of forward movement with that. And then with the pandemic and not being able to meet in person, it kind of put brakes on a lot of things, right? And then that also, the way we've been living for the last 16 months has really exacerbated a lot of these problems, right? And put a magnifying glass on it, because we're sitting here, everybody's sitting in their own homes and not being able to go to work or not being able to socialize the way they're used to, and now they're looking at things and then lost in their own thoughts and different things, and then that manifests in different ways, whether it's substance abuse, or if it's wanting to take action on different things, and then like depending on the person, they'll go in a different direction and want to try to do different things, right? And then it creates this environment where everybody wants to do something but feels like they can't.
Yeah, or they don't know where to turn to, or who is the appropriate person or the appropriate body. But I think the more that we all start having dialogue together, and I know this person, or this person does this, because a lot of what was said, even within the campaign, like I was like, oh my God, KSCS already does these kind of things, or they're already developing a plan for elders housing, or, so we know that there are people already within the organizations that have strategic plans and things that are in the works. But like you said, the community member now who feels empowered and wants to get off the sidelines and wants to be a part of the change, whatever their idea is, because I've had people with so many ideas that I think are phenomenal and things that we haven't been doing in this community. And it's just like they feel energized and recharged and ready to, like get their hands dirty, but they don't know where to go. And I think we could help direct them and show them and find the resources for all of the things that we want to accomplish. And I think that's what it starts with, is building relationships, building trust, seeing each other as brothers and sisters, or with partners. And we talked about that, private public partnerships. Like the possibilities are endless once we start to, and that's the key word, when we trust each other and we're doing it for the benefit of the people and our community. the sky's the limit. We could accomplish so much. And I think that's what the youth are telling us. They're tired of the political division or the religious division or the this or the that. Like it's like a dysfunctional family is what they're seeing. And they're saying, can we do better? Can we see a different future and a different reality? You know, like we're tired of this and we don't understand why it is the way it is. Like, and I think it's time. We are what we've been waiting for. No one else is going to come in this community and save us. It's up to us as individuals, as families, as a community, as a nation to say that we're not going to be this oppressed people and that we're not going to, you know, yeah, it's horrible what happened to Ungwehue people across this country. But are we going to sit there and pout about it and complain and say, oh, we're so poor? Are we going to say, nope, we're still here. We have the ability to learn our language. We have the ability to, you know, strengthen our collective identity. We have the ability to do all of these positive things. We have so many resources. Like, I swear, this community, we don't realize how good we have it. If we were to go to a remote community in the north where they don't have anything, like, we realize how spoiled we are and that we can do anything we want as, you know, a growing up teenager. We could dream as big as we want. We can get any kind of education, or if it's language and culture that's passionate and we want to be a teacher or, you know, a chief in the longhouse, whatever possibilities are there. And we just have to channel it and make it happen.
All right. Any final words?
Just want to thank the community again. I know it was a very interesting election, a historical election. Just want to say Nyawakoa for, you know, the people who, you know, really took the time to come and speak to me and ask me and get to know me, I guess, even on a personal level, because, you know, it's one thing to see a candidate and, you know, out there but the people that know me know that I'm motivated. I'm, in terms of, you know, the kind of person I am, that I've always been involved in sports, that I'm a team player, that I'm a motivator. It's just, I feel like I was meant to do this kind of work, and just Nyawa for the people that, you know, had the trust, I guess, in myself to take on this role on behalf of the community. And I'll do my best to make you proud and do what I can to make Kahnawake a great place for our future.
Okay, Nyawakoa.
All right, Nyawakoa, Wanage.
Iorì would like to thank the Community Media Strategic Support Fund for supporting this initiative.